Hi guys, welcome back to Clockwork Noodles, the channel where we are scarily approaching the end of the season, which is going to be the end of Moriarty the Patriot. At this point in time, there is no confirmation for a season 3, but I don't think it's going to end in just 3 episodes. As much as I've got from you guys, I asked it very carefully to a few of you how much material there was about. We've still got enough for at least another season, is what I'm gathering from you guys, without trying to spoil it for myself. Make sure you are subscribed, because very shortly I will be releasing my top 3 anime of this season, and my, of course, wrap-up, where I tell you guys what 4 anime are coming your way next season, all the anime that's coming out that I plan to watch. I'll give you a breakdown on some of those series, so you too are aware of what's coming your way. It is going to be the season of Isekai, but there is some other stuff hidden in the Isekai trips and Truck-kun having his say on the matter. But I think there's some good stuff coming your way. I just need to suck it up and actually write it and confirm my top 3. I have 5 anime that keep switching in and out and the positions keep changing, and I can't seem to settle on a top 3 because there's 5 anime that I think any other season would take the crown easily. There's some really good stuff that came out this season, and I really did enjoy the season, but we are sadly approaching the end, so I need to put it out of the works and record. I have all the materials, I just need to record it. But if you are interested in seeing when that drops, make sure you are on the Discord, because you get a notification when that goes up. Apart from the 2 times that the bot hasn't done its job, every single video that goes up on the channel is notified to you guys, and you also get to see the thumbnail and everything. So before we get going with episode 10, for those who are anime onlys and you are not familiar with the works of Arthur Conan Doyle, the story we're about to go into, The Sign of Mary, it is based on The Sign of the Four. I like The Sign of the Four. I always remember a fair bit from it just because of the way it's written, and the time I was reading it was a time where I was roughly in uni, so the book itself had a bit of meaning to me because I can just recall reading it and where I was. The events of this episode are based off of a bigger story. It does roughly keep the order of the events. Most of the events are pretty much the same, so it's a pretty good retelling. I am aware from the comments and all you guys have told me carefully not to try spoiling anything. Obviously, with the story like this, I kind of knew what was going to happen this episode anyway, but you guys have said that it is a condensed episode. I will give you a bit of a wrap up at the end because I've got some bits and pieces to say about it. But it has been a while since we've seen our boy Sherlock. I know that the anime studio and the actual animators tend to get a bit of stick whenever Sherlock takes up too much screen time, which I understand. I physically understand that it is Moriarty's story. However, you do need Sherlock in the story because of how important and intrinsic he is to Will. And I think with what's coming up next week, again, showing that Sherlock really is intrinsic to playing a role upon Will's big plan. Recently, I have been finding myself wishing that the same writers, the same authors, the same universe would do a spin-off series with the adventures of Sherlock and Watson, just so they actually get to spend time on some really good characters that they have developed. Give me more Sherlock. I want a Sherlock side story, because obviously I understand that people don't want him too much in this, but I would love to see Sherlock, Watson developing their relationship and the adventures they get to go on, because we do actually get to find out this week that a lot has happened since we haven't had them on screen. So they haven't been sitting around doing nothing. A lot has actually been occurring off screen. The episode takes place after Whiteley's murder, so not too far from what we saw last week, where we can see Sherlock is pondering about this death because he knows the link. He knows that the Lord of Crime is this Robin Hood character where generally if he kills someone, they're generally a bad guy. Sherlock is probably wondering right now, Whiteley wasn't a bad guy, and obviously he's probably pondering this and seeing that something doesn't quite line up. So that's what we see him pondering on when Watson decides to come and give him probably a heart attack. That Watson is to be married. Probably also gave a heart attack to any anime onlys who have absolutely no book knowledge. I think most people here have had some experience with Sherlock. Multiple releases there's been in the media anyway. I think most of us have got some knowledge that we know that Watson's beloved is Mary. Most of us know this. But again, it would have been an absolute heart attack to anybody who only really is just anime only checking it out, because she hasn't been mentioned at all by Watson whatsoever during any of this. However, bear in mind, Sherlock and Watson have not been on screen very much. The anime can be forgiven because it's not their story. We do also get backstory to know that Holmes and Watson have been off screen doing other cases a few months earlier on a previous case that we don't get to know about. It allows us to understand that during this point, especially if it's kind of recent, there was probably stuff going on. We know that Sherlock ducked out of going to meet up afterwards, where she invites them to dinner. Obviously, this is where fate sent Watson to go and meet her, but this was revealed to be 2 months ago, so a bit of a quick engagement, if anything. This entire episode is set up for a key important role a bit later on. But it's a setup for the case. All the information is given to us, all the information that we need. Most of the stuff here, setting up the initial design of the four, understanding the key components. We get a lot of backstory as well on just Mary being brought up, understanding that there is this link to the British India, the fact that her father was serving in a military over there, that she is motherless, served time in a boarding school. And then we understand that her father disappeared. I think in the book, she thought he had a heart attack. I think it's something like she thinks he has a heart attack. During the last 6 years, Mary has started to receive some very nice, expensive pearls, one for each year. A little bit suspicious, which of course is the main hook to get Sherlock involved. Can you find out what's going on with these pearls? Nice little hook. Obviously, there's a bigger story going on and Mary is hiding stuff. Initially, we do see Sherlock showing no animosity to Mary. Many of the media outlets have often shown there to be a bit of a tension between the two. Especially in the movies, there's been a lot of kind of bouncing between Sherlock and Mary. However, I like the fact that he's completely indifferent in this. He's just shown as indifferent. I think in the books as well, he was pretty much indifferent. However, he knows that there's been skipped details, which starts to raise a few of those alarm bells in Sherlock's head, but he does stay pretty chill about it. We are introduced, of course, to some of those major elements. The idea of the Major, who also served alongside Mary's father, who suspiciously had no paper trail of his business in India, despite coming back quite a wealthy man and having a bit of money to his name. The story is done quite nicely. We're basically going to see a walkthrough where he became more and more paranoid, and then he completely freaked out when he saw some guy with a peg leg. Pretty much giving you all the information that you know. You know that this guy's being followed. There's someone is out to get him. He's becoming paranoid because somebody with a peg leg is definitely freaking him out. A lot of the information is given pretty early on. We are introduced to Thaddeus and Bartholomew. Sadly, Bartholomew has died. These names as well. Thaddeus is such a good name. I love the name Thaddeus. Fantastic name. Bartholomew, good name as well. But Thaddeus is more of a strong... People think steampunk, they think Thaddeus is a good English solid name. Bartholomew, I've never met a man named Bartholomew in this country. Again, it probably is an older name which has died out by this point. Sadly, Bartholomew has died to a very odd, suspicious method that he's been stabbed by a needle, which is definitely coated in some kind of poison. Thaddeus recognising Mary, a little alarm bells and clues starting to go off. The sign of the four finally making its appearance in a flashback, which is just great. It's just great that they actually say the sign of the four, which is the name of the original story. So nice little link. We get the solution pretty fast. So this episode is very quick. It does suffer at that point because it is crammed. The Major and Mary's dad ending up coming to blows. They both located the treasure. They ended up coming to blows over the way that it should be split. So how should we split this treasure? And then, sadly, the Major ends up pushing her father and killing him. And upon his death, riddled with guilt, he ends up telling everything to his sons. Instructs his sons that you must make sure that Mary gets some form of the treasure. But, of course, they haven't found the treasure. The sons can't find it. So they just give her a pearl each year out of their own pocket, which is very, very nice. They have gone to that length to still try and uphold their father's wishes upon his deathbed and make sure that she is receiving some form of penance of what she's due. Credit to the music at this point because it is an orchestral rearrangement of Karma. Really, really nice. The strings really making their appearance this one, putting on some sorrow as well. Perhaps highlighting that the fact that the Major is riddled with guilt upon his deathbed. It was constantly holding this guilt in what he's done to another man. And again, he is burdened by the guilt that he never called for anybody. He says, if I had called for someone, maybe he would have lived. I like this little use of music here. And then Mary finally revealing that she indeed was hiding some facts. She knew about the treasure. We also learned that Bartholomew simply died when he finally found the treasure, which of course is no coincidence, especially in this world. Sherlock not accompanying Thaddeus to the police seemed like a bit of a careless move on his part, but again, he probably was expecting that the guys wouldn't come back, but it did seem like you've spotted tracks around the house. Simply letting him run off seemed like a bit of a risky move, but I can see where he's coming from. He didn't really expect the guys to come back. They're making a run with the treasure now. Mary pinning the blame of the murder onto them or Thaddeus to try and nudge everybody into locating the treasure, which shows you that there's a true goal underneath. There's something that she's hiding still. Sherlock is able to kind of raise his suspicions that the treasure really was just her ultimate goal. Obviously, we know a bit later on there's a reason why she's so fixated on the treasure, but we get a green filter. Green as a filter is the idea of money, greed. Sherlock's suspicions start to raise. She's even putting the treasure above her own safety. She knows that if she has the treasure, she's going to be at danger. The green filter at this point, I think, is more the fact that in Sherlock's eyes right now, she could be appearing as sly, a bit greedy. She's keeping a secret. He might be seeing it as she's fixated on the treasure. So therefore, to him, she might be appearing as greedy. Toby making an appearance is really, really cute. I love him. He looks like some kind of spaniel. I love it to pieces. But it's a nice little moment just to see the different ways that Sherlock can use to try and track someone down using the irregulars. We haven't seen those guys very much. My boy, Lestrade grew on me. Lestrade really grew on me. Making an appearance too. Once again, he is accompanying mum and dad on their quest for justice. I like the fact that he's being a very bad man by borrowing a police boat. I like it. The Thames boat chase is a nice little sequence. Sherlock also using the lights of their boat whilst they're behind them. It also bodes to their advantage because it's quite blinding. If you were suddenly to turn around seeing a light blaring in your eyes, you wouldn't be able to make up the appearances of who's attacking you. He does have a mask on. Sherlock and Watson are definitely COVID ready this week. I don't even know if maybe those masks were needed because these guys were literally staring into quite a bright light. Would explain why Watson is able to notice the needle being thrown as well, because it would have trailed a bit of light behind it, a bit of shadow as it travels quite quickly. Mum saving dad this week. The treasure ends up thrown into the Thames. Small just being crazy, which we'll get back to in a minute because I want to go back to the small thing in a minute. At the end, the truth is revealed. And of course, I should have predicted this would be the case. I kind of had inklings that there would be more to this. It is indeed Milverton. Milverton is the link that we need right now. Milverton is threatening Mary. Treasure has now ended up in the lake as well. Hopefully gets her out of that situation. However, for the sake of this story and the plot, I suspect it's not going to be enough to cool Milverton's jets. He wanted that cash and he's not going to have it now. So he's probably going to get it in another way. If he knows about those pearls as well, he might start extorting her for those. But Milverton here is being used as a link. And I have been saying it in the comments. I've been saying it quite often. I believe that Will is probably going to find that he's taken a lot to chew when it comes to Milverton. And he's going to try and reach out to Sherlock and have them both unite against a common enemy. And of course, this episode does just that. It sets Milverton up as an obstacle for Sherlock and Watson. Mary is Watson's beloved, knowing that he is threatening and blackmailing her. It's perfect fuel. It allows Sherlock to make that jump when Will reaches out to him, inevitably as well, because the preview is definitely gearing up for this. Preview confirming my theory as correct. We have next week the two criminals, Sherlock and Will, both seemingly on the screen at the same time, facing one another. I called it. The point of this episode, and we'll get to the downside in a minute, the point of this episode is to give Sherlock a reason to help Will and also a reason to hate Milverton. We need a reason to hate Milverton. Up until this point, if you had not had Mary involved, Sherlock doesn't really have a reason to go up against Milverton. He does know of Milverton as the king of blackmailers. Most people probably do, but he has no reason to go up against him. Now, Sherlock cares for his friend Watson. I often call them mum and dad just because they bicker like a married couple. But he does care for Watson, and Watson cares about Mary. Sherlock indirectly has a link to get involved to try helping her and Watson at the same time. Seeing Watson sad because Mary is sad is as well probably going to make Dad upset as well. Now, I am completely aware from you guys, of the comments we've all been discussing this week as well, that this is a very condensed episode. Again, a few people have been whinging about the amount of Sherlock, so I guess to those guys, it's good that it's been condensed. However, it does make an episode like this, the story, how much is going on at once, it really impacts the quality of the story. So, as I said earlier, the bad guy at this point is simply just crazy. There's not too much information given. Small is just crazy at this point, and he starts throwing stuff into the water. However, in the Sign of the Four, there's a lot more to it, and Small actually has a big confession. This episode ends up being quite rushed. It feels pretty rushed. There's a lot going on. You could imagine if they'd actually taken their time, and I can imagine in the story as well, in the manga, that this story is a bit more paced, and there's a lot more to it. It's one of those traits where I tell you guys often enough that I love a good written villain. And Milverton being that good written villain, I love to pieces, because you need to have a good counter to a hero. There's no thrill in seeing the hero overcoming and literally pulling out everything to beat down this big evil force. Small at this point is just crazy. He's just throwing his wealth into the river, so not a lot is given. So his actions just seem really odd in a sense with this story. The events this episode do stay the same from the book, so I have got to give them credit for keeping most of the important information in there. Milverton being added is the key thing. This is the main thing at this point. We need that key link that is going to help us next week. It also allows Mary to have her introduction, as she is very important to Watson's story. Now having her be targeted by Milverton will allow Sherlock to have a link with Milverton and actually have a reason to go for Milverton when Will no doubt comes and goes, hey, I need a hand here. The Milverton link also confirms Sherlock and Will link up was probably going to be an inevitable thing, and I'm happy for this. I'm really happy that Will probably actually need to rely on someone else to help him overcome a big foe. Milverton being built up as he is, showing how dastardly, how low, and how just dirty he plays. It's good. We all need to be hating this man. If you're just angry at him for just being angry and you don't like the fact that he's the bad guy and you hate him, it means the anime's doing something right. You want to be hating this guy. Milverton is a very bad person, and that is what we want. It's going to make it so much more better when eventually he is taken down by the forces of justice. It wasn't my favourite episode, but it was a key important episode to get some things stated, to get a little bit of information there, which we need. We need Sherlock in that position, so Mary is quite key in giving us that link, Sherlock to Watson, and then Watson to Milverton, that nice little link there. I am happy that they have made that choice to have that as a link. It was also quite foreseeable that that would be the link. It's going to be even more better when I finally see what I've been predicting would happen finally happen on a screen. A nice retelling, a bit of a reminder of the story that I read back in uni. Nice little reminder of that book. Definitely do recommend, if you haven't read any of the books, definitely go and hit them up. Some of them are quite short stories, so they shouldn't take too much of your time up. There's probably audio versions available if you're more into podcasts or whilst you're driving, listening to the Sherlock Holmes stories playing out. No doubt, I think if you're enjoying the Moriarty the Patriot story, you will enjoy the Sherlock Holmes stories too, and you can see where Moriarty originated from. You can go and see those original clashes with Sherlock and Moriarty in the books. So make sure you guys are taking care of yourselves. Have a good day, and bye-bye, guys.